Khumalo. If you remember from the last time, we left off with the lesson learned that Virus Breeding Ground is amazing in Freedom Khumalo, turning him into a super wizard, trashing lots of assets and upgrades for cheap, or rather no money at all. However, we noticed that the Virus Breeding Ground interaction with Hive Mind was a bit lackluster. If you think about it, Hive Mind comes in with 1 virus counter. To get it all the way up to 5, to get insta trashes from Tripano, you need to spend 4 clicks on Virus Breeding Ground. And when the Corp purges, they spend 3 clicks. Your Corp is actually winning in terms of the click war. So that makes Virus Breeding Ground a bit less good. I wonder if there's a better way to use Virus Breeding Ground. You probably don't want to make use of its clickability. You want to simply use the virus counters on Breeding Ground as is, which brings us to a card that I've never yet touched, one which I've shown a lot of hesitation to run, Yussef, the virus Fractor, I should say. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad card, it has really good numbers. Base Strength 3 harkens to another Fractor that also had Base Strength 3 that previously was on the most wanted list, Cerberus Lady. With 1 install cost, that's a mighty good number to see on the top left corner, and using an alternative currency to break ice, we are very tempted by this new Fractor. My biggest problem is not with Yussef itself, but the fact that in the current landscape, Anarchs don't really need another good solution to barriers. Paperclip is already god tier. You don't need an alternative to Paperclip. Because you're just not going to get that much improvement out of it, as I keep saying time and time again. If they printed a virus decoder or virus killer instead, I'd be analyzing this very differently, right? But since we're stuck with this as the only virus icebreaker for now, our question will be, can we use Yussef to its fullest? And to do that, we need to make Yussef do something that Paperclip doesn't normally do. Can we use it to break code gates or sentries, right? Because if we can use Yussef's stats against some of the nastier ice in the game, like those bulky code gates or those multi-sub sentries, we are in business. And it turns out the developers, or designers rather, have given us a way to do so. Enter Lamb. Oh yeah, okay, this is gonna get real exciting. We are running another Fractor here. Lamb is a Shaper Fractor that turns ice into barriers regardless of the initial subtype. So in conjunction with Yussef, we get something really interesting. So normally this is a universal breaker in the sense that it's like an AI breaker. You can break any piece of ice with it as long as you are able to convert it into a barrier. The only problem is that it obviously is really expensive. 2 to convert to a barrier, and if it's 3 strength or more, you need to pump it for 3 credits, and then 2 credits to break all its subroutines. That's 7 whole credits, and you can only do that once per turn. Pretty expensive. Now, with Yussef, things change, because now you don't have to pay the 5 credits to break the ice. Instead, you can let Yussef do the heavy lifting in breaking ice subroutines. All you need Lime for is to convert it to the barrier subtype, so that Yussef can break it, reducing the breaking cost from 7 to just a measly 2 credits. Again, to keep note of the once per turn restriction. All these once per turn restrictions, as well as the 2 credit cost to convert to barrier, are lifted obviously against barriers. So we want to be facing lots of barriers because, you know, we won't need to even use Lamb. Yussef will do all the work for us. But if we encounter sentries or code gates, Lamb will be there, and Lamb will make it a lot cheaper to break ice because we are using an alternative currency. So you'll notice that the big downside with this deck is that we are using 2 breakers that have a 2 memory cost. Both Yussef and Lamb are very expensive in memory, so we need support for that. But thankfully, it seems like this interaction was completely intended, because they release the virus console with these memory problems in mind. It seemed like Nob Kiri was designed for such a deck, because it gives you 3 memory to host Yussefs on, and that's absolutely amazing. This allows us to actually have 3 of those breakers in play at any one time. 2 Lambs and 1 Yussef, or 1 Lamb and 2 Yussef. In fact, you can extend the number of Yussefs you install by using another memory card in Progenitor. Also in faction, this daemon allows you to host Yussefs and gain the additional benefit that you will keep virus counters on it or rather at least one virus counter on it after a purge. So this deck is just coming together really well. You have lots of in-faction cards that enable you to bypass the major weakness of these two breakers being 2 MU to play. And they complement each other really well. Yussef and Lamb, they go together really well. So this is the deck list that we're going to play. I'm going to highlight a couple of other cards. So one big interaction we have here is Knifed. As I mentioned, Lamb only works once per turn. So any discerning corp will attempt to create a 3 ice deep or a 3 ice deep server that only consists of code gates and sentries. To get around that, Knife will help you do that, because on your first run there, you use Lamb to convert the outermost ice into a barrier and kill it with Knifed. Then on subsequent turns, there will only be 2 remaining ice on the server. You can bust through with double Lamb. Note that we are not playing triple Lamb because there's no memory space for triple Lamb. Your base memory of 4 is only enough to hold 2 Lambs. You cannot use Knob Kieri or Progenitor to host the third Lamb because it's not a virus breaker. Okay, what other interactions do we have here? Ice Cover is pretty amazing. It's only a one-off, but when you get it down, it saves a lot of money. It saves a lot of virus counters, because Lamb can now break ice at 3 strength instead of 2 for only 2 credits, and Yussef will typically save you 1 virus counter every time you encounter an ice. And yeah, trust me, if you're using Yussef as your only breaker, you are going to find that you're consuming a lot of virus counters, especially against 5 and 6 strength ice code gates. I'm thinking those ice will consume a lot of Yussef counters, and to get those counters, obviously we're going to use Virus Breeding Ground. We don't need to use its click ability. Every turn the Virus Breeding Ground will generate us this alternative currency to use to break ice subroutines. The last thing I want to talk about is our influence expenditure on security testing. I feel like since we're going to be running very often, we might as well make use of our running to gain security testing money so that we are moving forward even more. This makes sense. We want a run-based economy because Yussef is all about the run-based economy. Whenever you make a successful run, you get 1 extra virus counter, so actually farming up virus tokens on an empty archives or an open remote is ideal, and security testing gives you even more mileage out of that, really punishing asset-based corps. Not only do you get to trash your assets for basically free, you also get free security testings and virus counters on Yussef, so you can really spiral out of control very quickly. So that's mostly the deck. It speaks for itself, and if it still doesn't really speak to you, well, here's the playthrough coming up. Now before we begin, you viewers have spoken, I have listened. I know a lot of you do not like the new Full Bleed art cards. They make the board state more confusing than necessary. So from now on, I will be switching almost all of the cards over to the original. Unfortunately, I can't apply this change to this particular game. I needed to refresh my browser, and well, we are already in the game. So unfortunately, you have to put up with this. I apologize, but moving forward, this should not be an issue anymore. We open with a hand full of all art cards, so it's a pretty good hand. I've had worse, Earthrise, so much draw, and some money in gamble. Now, I'm going to play aggressively here. I'm actually going to run HQ, knowing that against SSO, most of their ice don't have teeth. They can't really hurt me in the early game. The worst I have to worry about is a Morcelus. And since they have no advanced cards out there, you know, I run the HQ, they show Hortum, which ends the run but leaves them very poor, so I can just run R&D to trigger my mining accident for my first bad publicity. So this is something you need to abuse against SSO. They typically, if they ice centrals instead of getting their remote with lots of advancements going, you can really abuse that by, you know, placing a lot of pressure on centrals. So last turn I had a reason to run R&D to get a mining accident off. This turn not so much. The thing is, SSO typically has a low agenda density. Most of the agendas will actually be concentrated in HQ. So that's the server I want to get into, but obviously my opponent smartly put an end run on it. Basically preventing me from making further runs on it. Now all that changes when I draw my Lamb. Unfortunately, with only 2 credits, Lamb is out of the question for now. So I draw into a Dirty Laundry here, and I'm very tempted to Blind Laundry into R&D, but I'm gonna play it safe instead, dropping a daily cast. I can always laundry at another time. Chances are the R&D ice is not a vanilla, otherwise they would have rested it when I was poking around for the mining accident, but it could be an enigma, so we'll never know. However, what we do know is our opponent is going down to 2 credits in order to score this City Works project, using the SSO ability on the remote ice. Now, this is a very, very strong telegraph, right? They are saying, even though I'm on 2 credits, you can't steal this agenda behind an unrest ice. So this very much telegraphs to me that the remote ice is either a wormhole or an asteroid belt, not a nebula. Nebula, because nebula is porous and I have no programs out, so it would do nothing. So given that it's one of those 2 ice, you know, I am not too worried about much. However, I'm worried about the wormhole. The wormhole will fire off Hortum's second subroutine, and because Hortum is now triple advance, that's a big problem, right? The second subroutine now says the court may search for 2 cards and then end the run, and we don't want to give that effect. So because of that, we cannot just face check the ice, even though it just ends the run. We need to at least have a way of breaking it, and we actually do. I could play Sure Gamble, install Lamb, and make a run. Now this would normally be okay if not for the fact that I don't have enough money. Yeah, I'm just a bit short. Lamb is very expensive to install, 4 credits to install, and as you know, as I mentioned in the introduction, it's a flat 7 credits to break anything. I don't have that much money, and even if I do, I'll be dropping my entire hand to City Works project with 5 meat damage. So instead, I'm going to concede the City Works and make the safer play of Dirty Laundry into R&D, letting my opponent know that in the chat box I could have attempted this, but you know, I choose to do something else, which is to apply central pressure, get my money out with Dirty Laundry, and swing over a mining accident while I'm at it. So even though my opponent gets this agenda, hey, at least it's not an agenda that I'm too worried about them scoring, and it sets up my board, right? I now have a lot of money, 14 credits at the start of my next turn. I have 2 bad publicity. I'm ready to contest my opponent's servers. So my opponent considers their next move. Interestingly enough, what happens after the double advance? Do they jam a new 3-pointer agenda in? Do they wait 1 more turn? There's lots of things they could do. It's a very tricky situation for my opponent as they are very poor. SSO Industries typically runs very light on economy, instead relying on the fact that their space ice costs 0 to rest. But my opponent is overextending here. They are advancing the City Works to 4, but not scoring it. They think, well, scoring it is not going to give me any benefits. I'm just going to let it cook in the remote so that I can get more triple advance ice. And this is a big mistake for my opponent because they don't know I'm on Lamb, which can utterly wreck them. I mean, to be fair, all I need is to drop a Black Orchestra and it will have the exact same effect. I would still be able to contest my opponent's remote, but hey, Lamb is Lamb. Lamb will get past either Wormhole or Asteroid Belt without question for a flat 7 credits. -2 thanks to the bad pup. So we are still in good economy shape. And of course, I made sure to end my run with 6 cards in hand so that I can steal the City Works. Triggering my iFight Worst, drawing me into Not Kieri and 2 knives. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay, game on. With knives, I can now start really destroying my opponent's advanced ice, and I'm really looking to do that. My first target, of course, is the Hortum on HQ. Doing that has 2 benefits. Firstly, it means I can run HQ repeatedly, but more importantly, it means that the wormhole on the remote is deactivated. With no other rest ice to fire off, its subroutine is basically blank. So now all I'm doing is to calculate how many credits do I need to break the Hortum. Again, it's a flat 7 credits, 2 credit discount thanks to Bad Pup, but instead, I see myself racking up Yussef counters instead. I could have done the knife on HQ, but instead I wanted to set up my rig, get the Yussef in play and get the Knob Kieri ticking. So I want to be making successful runs. So the reasoning behind this is that if I'm going to make repeated runs in HQ, I want to have Yussef installed so that I'm gaining virus counters while I'm gaining accesses, potentially opening up more possibilities for Khumalo trashes. So in essence, I'm delaying my HQ knife by 1 turn, allowing my opponent to ice up R&D, which is the wrong server, because I'm thinking of knifing into HQ this turn. Now the sickening thing is that Hortum requires 3 viruses to break, 3 virus counters. assuming I lamb it and then use Yussef. I don't have the 3 required counters, so instead I'm gonna break it normally with lamb, putting me down to 0 credits and killing the Hotem. But I'm gonna be able to run HQ 3 times in a row, allowing me to rack up Yussef counters. At this point, I access a Red Planet Couriers, a pretty tough choice. Do I give up 5 of my Yussef counters to trash the Planet Couriers? If my opponent's building a deck around RPC, they probably have another one in deck, so I'd rather save the virus counters for breaking ice. So I passed on it, and now I'm broke. My opponent has ice on HQ and I'm broke. Well, as you notice, I'm going to speed up the video here because the subsequent turns is all going to be about me hammering runs on HQ as and when I can. I get my sec testing down so I can sec test the remote. However, my opponent smartly counters by icing the remote, so I can't just freely run through a wormhole with nothing to fire off. This is good play by my opponent. It turns off my security testing. I need to find another avenue to fire it off. So I've chose HQ, and I'm going to scout out their HQ ice. First, I saw a Masvingo. This is a barrier with 1 subroutine, which is easily breakable with 1 virus counter from Yussef. Yeah, Masvingo is really bad against Yussef. Then we hit a second Hotem, this time without advancement counters, but taxes all the same. I was forced to use a bunch of virus counters to clear the Hotem, but my opponent purged virus counters, so we are back to 0. So now I need money to break ice with Lamb, hence I dropped the Liberator account so that I can start breaking ice with Lamb. That way I can make successful runs and get virus counters on Yussef, and then the engine gets going again. So yeah, virus purges are a problem. This is one problem that we didn't used to have with run-based economy. Back when Criminal was running Desperado and security testing, every successful run you gain 3 credits, those are yours to keep. Whereas here, you're getting 2 virus counters on your first successful run each turn, but the co-op can potentially purge them away from you. So in order to increase our resilience against virus purges, I've dropped down a virus breeding ground. This should give us a steady stream of viruses for the rest of the game. I've also dropped a Liberator accounts, which I'm planning to liberate a lot of money off because my opponent's about to go for an agenda score. We are on 6 points, so stealing this city works here means it's game for us, and with Earthrise ticking, I don't have to worry about the meat damage. The only problem is, can we get through this 4 ice server with only 2 lambs available? I think we can, but it really depends on what our opponent's ice is. If they have enough ice to keep us out, I'm sorry, but we are gonna lose a lot of credits on this run. It's still worth a shot anyway, so I'm going to knife this remote immediately. If they don't rest ice to avoid the knife, they're going to lose the game. I'm going to steal the city works. So they're forced to rest their Morcelus here. This expands a lamb usage. The next ice is actually a barrier which I can break. So I break it normally with lamb, and then we see a Masvingo. Again, this is easy to break because I have Yussef. And I'm about to get through and win the game with the SMC into lamb when I realized I did not have enough credits to break the wormhole. It was 7 to break and I only had 6 credits. Yeah? So I took back the 3 credits that I used to pump my icebreaker because I realized I wasn't breaking the wormhole subroutine. So my opponent ends the run with wormhole. I'm not going to break it. I'm not going to turn it into a barrier. I was literally 1 credit short. Had I clicked for just 1 more credit before making the run, had I done my lamb mathematics correctly, I would have won the game right there and then. I was very disappointed. This was a clutch turn and I could have gotten it all, but instead I've expanded my economy lead and I'm now dirt poor. Well, at least I have 2 virus breeding grounds ticking, but that's not much of a consolation as my opponent is now able to score 3 agenda points. And I have to worry about what's in store for me, because remember, they do have Red Planet Courier, so they can easily close out the game with their final agenda at any point. I'm very worried about this. This was a huge mistake. I should have ended the run as soon as I forced the Masvingo res, because at that point I would have deduced that I wouldn't have enough money to make the entire run successful. Alright, so with the remote impenetrable, I lost all my money on running the remote. I don't have the resources to rerun it, nor the cards to steal city works, so I'm going to run HQ instead and start chalking up virus counters on Yussef's. With 2 Yussefs in play, I'm getting double the number of virus counters on successful runs, which is why I'm installing those Yussefs. Normally, you don't need to install 2 of the same fractal, but with Yussef, it's a different story because they both get individual virus counters on successful runs. I'm also poking their hand because they probably have agendas in there and I would like to steal them. HQ is also the easiest server to run now. It only costs 1 virus counter to break the outer Masvingo and 2 or 3 virus counters to break Ho'em, depending on my mood, whether I want to break the first Ho'em subroutine or whether I want to give that credit to my opponent. So I keep running HQ here, access a fast track. Khumalo fires for the first time this game. A 0 to trash fast track goes in the bin. We don't want our opponent to cheese us out with a Baltic Labor fast track Red Planet Couriers win. Remember that game? Yes, I've been burned by that. Not again. Right? They might have a government takeover. It's not public agenda, but they could easily be running one. Now, we keep pressuring HQ here. Again, there's no other server to pressure. The other remote. Normally, I would run Archives or R&D at this point to force reses, but against SSO, forcing reses is useless because obviously most of their space ice costs 0 to res. So what's the point? They are not going to lose tempo from running from my aggressive play on the other servers. So instead, I'm just going to keep hitting HQ and keep them honest with making sure they have no agendas in their hand. I keep accessing the same old cards, so that's not going to happen. And slowly but surely, I am racking up virus counters on my Yussefs. There's not really much point purging them because virus breeding ground will introduce new virus counters on the start of my turn anyway. So we continue forward tempo here. The Dirty Laundry giving me forward tempo. I get a free access, get a Nob Kiari virus counter. Still accessing the same Morcelus. Now I play the Mining Accident for the third bad publicity, because at this point my opponent has triple advanced the Masvingo on HQ. So previously it was easy to break with 1 virus counter, but now with 3 subroutines, I'm not going to spend 3 virus counters to break Masvingo. Instead, I'm just going to pay 2 credits from Lamb. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So even against multi-sub barriers, Lamb covers you because Lamb requires you to only pay 2 credits to break all subroutines. So meaty barriers like Endless Oiler and a very advanced Masvingo can all be easily broken with Lamb. So yeah, as you may have noticed, the board state is now pretty much set. I'm all set up. My rig is fully out. I have 4 fractors in play, but this is exactly how the deck works. You want to have all those fractors in play. Multiple Lambs allow you to break multiple Ho'ems on HQ, turning all of them to barriers, and multiple Yussefs allow you to collect lots of virus counters on successful runs. You will have noticed that some of my deck is not in play. The Progenitor, I'm actually running 2 copies of it and 3 Yussefs. However, one of the Progenitors was trash earlier due to stealing city works, so I'm not going to get my 3rd Yussef in play as much as I would like to. The other missing component is the one-off Ice Carver. Again, it was in my opening hand but trash due to city works. That would have helped so much because it would save me 1 virus counter every time I break Ho'em, and it would save me 3 credits to pump Lamb every time I break Masvingo with Lamb. Masvingo is unfortunately at 3 strength, 1 strength higher than the 2 strength on Lamb, meaning that to break it, I'm not paying 2 credits, I'm paying 5. Very expensive. The Ice Carver is absolutely necessary here, but it got trashed. Very unfortunate. Now we come to the mid to late game and my opponent challenges me to steal this Hollywood renovation in the remote. Obviously I have to steal it now. I can't wait because next turn they can play Red Planet Couriers to score the Hollywood. It won't win them the game, but if they have Baltic Labor and some way to get a 7 point like Clones Are Not People, we lose. So, well, no, they can't score it. Wait a minute, they are on 0 credits. Okay, so we have breathing room here. This, I don't have to run the server just yet. I can spend a turn taking money. But do I need to? Let's do some maths. Quick maths. Alright, Wormhole. 7 credits to break, right? With Lamb. Asteroid Belt. Another 5 credits. But we don't have to pay credits. We can use Yussef. With Yussef, I need to pump it 3 times and break once. So that is 6 credits. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 virus counters. I do have 4 virus counters between my VBGs. So Asteroid Belt can be broken for free. This leaves 1 virus counter on Yussef, which I can use to break the 1 subroutine Masvingo. So that's looking quite good. I can break the inner 3 ice. Now I don't know what's the outer last ice there, but I know that regardless of what it is, I have a spare Lamb. I can break it at a flat 7 credit rate. Remember that? So because of that, as long as I run with at least 7 plus 7 credits, 7 to break the outer ice, 7 to break the innermost wormhole, I'm good to go. And I do have that money Don't forget, I've played all 3 mining accidents, I have 3 bad pub. The real issue here is the upgrade in the remote. Now, because my opponent's on 0 credits, there's a lot of things that wouldn't be useful here because, well, they're on 0 credits. So, in theory, I can't think of any upgrade that they can res on 0 credits that would stop me from making a successful steal. But just in case, since I have the kitty cat in my hand, and since I have the required 14 credits to break the 2 ice I need to anyway, I'm just gonna play the kitty cat just to be safe and last click run the remote. Now, they revealed the outer ice, which, to my very gleeful joy, is not a code gate or sentry. So I get 2 credit discount on breaking this asteroid belt because I don't need to convert it into a barrier, saving me 2 credits. I'm going to break it with the 4 VBG counters as mentioned earlier. The inner one's going to get broken by Lamb for 5 credits. I also played a knife just in case it was not a barrier, so getting a trash out of the way. But yeah, because I calculated that even if I play Rumor Mill and Knife, I still have enough credits thanks to the bad pub. I didn't have to worry about you know, making the run with being 1 credit short this time. I was going to break through all the ice and break through that wormhole as well, leaving myself with just 4 credits. But 4 credits is all I need to get to the bottom of the server and steal the 9th point for the win. It turns out that with all the HQ runs I made earlier, at one point my opponent actually had 3 public agendas in hand, so I should have won a lot earlier, but hey, late is better than never. I steal from the remote for the win. Whew. Pretty convincing victory if you ask me. My opponent wasn't at match point, at the point where I won the game, and yeah, even though I made the huge mistake of making a deep run and having being 1 credit short and not being able to contest the agenda, I was still in the driver's seat for most of the game, hammering my opponent's HQ, and you know, probably should have won a lot earlier given that there were agendas in my opponent's hand. I am definitely impressed by this breaker. It may not exactly be the best of the best in terms of fractals overall. I mean, Paperclip is just too good, but you know, the reaction induced when I installed it against my opponent, who thought that the CityWorks project was safe behind a triple advanced piece of ice, that was gold to me, right? Like, regardless of whether that was asteroid belt or wormhole, I knew I had a 100% chance of making it through the piece of ice by virtue of Lamb's ability to convert it to a barrier regardless of its original subtype. It also did a great job of allowing me to repeatedly run Hortums at a discount, right? Normally, Anarchs are very bad at breaking code gates, but Lamb allows me to break them a lot more efficiently. And that's a big deal, because it means that I can get more HQ accesses. I should have won earlier, but I also get a lot of chances to use Khumalo's ability. It also has a very nice side benefit of being one of those breakers that says break any number of barrier subroutines, as more and more multi-sub barriers are getting printed, like Endless Eula and potentially Masvingo this game. The ability to just say, hey, there's no point in super advancing your Masvingo because I have this breaker called Lamb and it's pretty damn good against Masvingo, is super huge, right? My opponent could have, you know, dropped Dedication Ceremony on a Masvingo as a tactic to prevent me from getting into the remote repeatedly, but knowing that I was running Lamb, there was no point in doing so. Complementing Lamb was the equally impressive Yussef, I must say. It really stands out as a gold standard in terms of barrier breaking, you know, rivaling Paperclip when you get the viruses set up. I did the calculations, and with the amount of ice breaking I did, fueled by Lamb, I would, if I was using Paperclip instead of Yussef this game, it would have cost me 43 credits to break all the Hortums, all the Masvingos, all the asteroid belts. But Yussef, 0 credits, 0, because the virus counters did all the work for me. Of course, this is not a very fair comparison. You have to take into account the fact that to get Yussef to work, obviously I needed to install a whole bunch of cards like Nob Kieri and 2 VBGs. But after that was set up, it was super efficient. Super efficient. And that was the other reason that I was able to make so many HQ runs. You saw me during the mid game where I sped up the game, just repeatedly hammering HQ every turn just to get Yussef triggers. But it's not because, you know, I wanted extra virus counters. I was treading water with virus counters because Horton made me spend 2 or 3 virus counters and the Musvingo an extra 1. So I wasn't actually earning virus counters. But what I was doing was getting free accesses because it was free to break ice with Yussef. And it really helps that the virus-based economy is actually a lot more efficient in Anarch than the equivalent drip economy cards that you associate with. Because with Desperado out of the card pool, which is obviously one of the best economy cards for a run-based deck, by playing regular money breakers, you just don't have the fuel to keep you going. There's no equivalent to Desperado when it comes to gaining real credits. But with viruses, you can gain virus tokens on successful runs with Nob Kiari, with Yussef, and that was what fueled my ice-breaking economy. Coupled with Virus Breeding Grounds, which is essentially equivalent to Underworld Contact. Instead of giving you 1 credit, it gives you 1 virus counter. 1-for-1 trade is kind of where it's at, because to break a barrier subroutine, it costs Paperclip 1 credit. To break a barrier subroutine with Yussef, it also costs 1 credit. So I love Yussef. And Lamb and in tandem with Lamb, I think these are really good breakers. Is it tier 1? That's a good question. I don't think it is. Because it has its own shortcomings. Remember the one turn where I was a credit short? That turn where I could have won the game by stealing the agenda, but instead, Lamb costs just too much money. Not to mention that if I had more virus counters, I would have been able to make it through as well. But I didn't, because it was too early on in the game. I did not have double VBG setup, and I wasn't able to make lots of successful runs earlier on, so I didn't get that many Yussef or Nob Kiari triggers. As a result, I was forced to pay real money with Lamb, which I did not have. So that's a question for you. Having seen my deck list, what card should I have included in my deck to ease this early game problem of not having enough money to break with Lamb and not having enough viruses to break with Yussef? Have you thought about it? Yep. The correct answer is none other than everyone's favorite competitive card, Stimhack. So good that you even play it out of faction. I mean, it's one influence. It's super competitive and has a lot of users, even though you are supposed to be using breakers that cost 0 credits to break. It negates the 7 credit cost to break a piece of ice with Lamb. This allows you... it basically is a get out of jail free card in case you're up against a super meaty piece of ice that even Yussef cannot deal with. It also allows you to cheat a Lamb into play. If you have an SMC on the board, Stimhack is your best friend. Okay, I know you're thinking of that other card. I'm not going to endorse that card, okay? You know it's utter jank. No. I refuse. No, we are not going to talk about Surfer. Okay, fine. Yeah, fine. I mean, it's a shit card, right? It's dead against Ice-like Corpse. They're not going to make a deep server, so your Surfer's never going to come into play. It's dead because even if, if you're using Lamb instead of Surfer, well, you're still paying 2 credits to change it on encounter, and then you can use Yussef counters anyway. Also, it's completely unnecessary even if the co-op decides to put lots of code gates and sentries on the remote, because as a good Netrunner, you should be swinging over to the other servers and pressuring those servers, or using your knives to whittle down the remote server. There's lots of possible counterplays instead of just including this dumb card that doesn't always work. But I must admit that it would have made this game super easy. Surfer would have helped so much with sieging that remote, making it nigh impossible for my opponent to score in that remote at all, because even if they build a 4 deep remote, all I need to do is to pay 6 credits to surf all the way to the bottom and steal whatever agenda there's in the remote. Now the funny thing was, you saw that there was an upgrade in the remote for the latter half of the game. Obviously it didn't come into play at the end because they were on 0 credits, but it actually turned out to be a Navi Mumbai City grid. And that would actually have stopped me from using Surfer, because Surfer's not an icebreaker. I can't use paid abilities on Surfer if they actually manage to res the Navi grid. Another strike for Surfer. All that said though, to be completely objective and impartial, Surfer would have helped this game. Whether it be sieging the HQ, I would have been able to avoid Horton quite a lot of times. And yeah, like, It is definitely a useful card to have, especially after installing Nob Kieri, because Nob Kieri gives you 3 MU, 2 of which will be used by additional Yussef, leaving 1 free memory, that 1 dangling memory. If there's any program to use it on, it's Surfer. So there you go. If there's one deck in which you want to include Surfer, it's this one. Go ahead, you have my endorsement. Go add more jank in the tank to this janky tank, because why not? Well, every game in the Khumalo series so far, I review Khumalo and am always in awe of how awesome Khumalo is. This was the very first game where Khumalo has disappointed. All it did was trash fast track. Can't blame Khumalo too much. After all, it's to be expected that against a non-asset based corporation, you're just not going to get that many Khumalo triggers. Runs are expensive, I can't make that many runs, and accessing ice, which I did most of this game, isn't very good for Khumalo. The other thing to note is that even though I could have theoretically trashed Red Planet Couriers this game, I decided not to, simply because there were more important cards to spend virus counters on. Khumalo directly competes with Yussef for virus counters as a currency. So this actually is anti-synergizers in a way, because this means that you are less likely to use Khumalo. You'd rather save those virus counters for pumping up your Yussef. So Khumalo wasn't the MVP this game like most of the previous games, but there was a hidden MVP, a card that I haven't talked about thus far, a card which made all my HQ pressure runs possible. It was a bit of a waste that I did not have Bagat installed because it would have done so much work, but there was one card which I couldn't have done without this very game. Can you think of what it is? It's not Surfer, it's not Stimhack, it's not Lamb, it's not Yussef, or any of the virus related cards. It's actually the Humble Mining Accident. Believe it or not, at the end of this game, I had 3 bad publicity, and I spent all of it on every single turn, every run I made. It was a huge payout, right? This passive economy, which I never even talked about during the entire game, because it just did work. It was like a workhorse behind the scenes. It's something you don't really feel, but it felt, I guess you do feel it during the game when I was considering whether I should make runs or not. You know, knowing that I could make runs with 0 credits in my credit pool, just relying on the 2 bad publicity that I had for most of the game to use Lamb's ability. That's just so good. It made my runs free. Between Yussef virus counters and Lamb triggers, I was able to run HQ for free, and that was why I was able to make HQ runs every single turn to keep my opponent's hand honest. Mining Accident, I believe, is a very key card in Khumalo, simply because as Khumalo, you want to play aggressively, like Edward Kim, like Wizard. You want to be accessing HQ often, because that way you'll be able to get to agendas and you'll be able to trash key operations from hand. And what better way to do that than to get discount on your runs with Mining Accident? Unless your Breaker Suite is requires no money whatsoever, which isn't the case. Obviously, they haven't printed enough virus breakers for that to happen. Mining Accident is the next best card to fuel your HQ runs. There's no other way about it, and it is a it's a self-boosting feedback loop as well. You want to be aggressive, so Mining Accident helps you with that. But also, Mining Accident's trigger relies on you making early runs, and Khumalo wants to make early runs anyway. You remember I was poking HQ, forced the hot rest, then ran R&D trying to get a Khumalo trigger. These are all click compression measures that are just better in Khumalo than other IDs. If you are playing Sunny LeBeau, for example, there isn't much reason to run HQ and R&D when you could be setting up your resources. But in Khumalo, you want to be firing your ability from the get-go. So you want to be running on turn 1 anyway, and turn 1 runs usually result in you being able to play Mining Accident because you fulfill the successful run on Central's condition. So it's a self-boosting feedback loop that is so too good to give up. I think every Khumalo deck should consider running Mining Accident, and you'll probably see me doing so from now on. And that's the learning point from this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. As always, thanks for watching and happy net running. I'll see you next time.